J.J. Watt would have never made it to the NFL if it was up to his college coaches and top programs around the country. So he bet on himself and went from a pizza delivery driver to an NFL superhero. But how good was J.J. Watt actually?
All I know is, you mess with me, you got problems.
As a child, J.J. was forced to give up his first true passion for reasons out of his control. But it was also Watt's childhood that molded him into the type of football player he'd later become. His dad was a firefighter, so from a very young age, he learned the value of hard work and dedication. And with his dad being gone on the job for long stretches, Watt cherished whatever free time he could spend with him. And naturally, J.J. always chose to use that time to play sports with his pops and his two younger brothers. But J.J.'s first love wasn't football. By the age of 4, he was playing competitive hockey, while he didn't start playing football until the 5th grade. Watt said he was drawn to hockey because it forced him to be tough and work hard, just like his dad as a firefighter. For a few years, JJ would go straight from football to hockey and vice versa. But when he turned 13, he was forced to give up one of the two. Because of scheduling constraints with weekly games and practices, along with his family being unable to afford to continuously replace his equipment, Watt had to give up his first true passion, hockey. With more free time, Watt was able to pursue other sports that were cheaper and didn't conflict with football season. And as his body continued to grow and develop, Watt soon found out that he could dominate in pretty much anything he wanted. In high school, he was a 4-sport athlete, starring in football, basketball, baseball, and track and field. JJ showed early signs of becoming the freak of nature he is today by winning a state title in the shot put. It was the same strength and athleticism he used on the gridiron to play on both sides of the ball. Shining as a tight end and defensive end, Watt as a senior was named Conference Player of the Year, First Team All-State, and Milwaukee Journal Sentinel Athlete of the Year. But despite this long list of accolades, Watt was disrespected by outsiders. Recruiting services only labeled him a 2-star recruit, and you could count the number of offers he received on one hand.
Yeah, obviously you send out your game film, and I still was fortunate to get offers, but I feel like, there could have been more.
Central Michigan was one of those schools, and their coach promised Watt that he would score a bunch of touchdowns playing tight end, so he committed. But things didn't exactly go as planned. As a freshman, he only had 8 catches for 77 yards, so the coaches wanted to move him to offensive tackle. Again, feeling disrespected and now lied to, JJ decided to bet on himself and left Central Michigan after one semester with the idea of walking on at Wisconsin, a school he was a diehard fan of growing up. But there was one problem. As a walk-on, he'd have to pay to go to school, and his parents said they could only afford to pay for 1 year of tuition. So, from January to June, Watt worked at Pizza Hut as a delivery guy while enrolled at community college near his childhood home. Not only did this experience provide him with much-needed cash, he said it also relit his internal fire to chase his dream of making the NFL. JJ's mom saw this and said it definitely gave him a look at what would happen if he didn't go to college. It gave him the idea of working hard and showed that it wasn't something he wanted to do his whole life. Having gotten a taste of what life could be like without football, and hating every bit of it, Watt headed to the University of Wisconsin, more determined than ever before. When he arrived there, he made another move that would forever change his life. After having dreams of catching touchdown passes, he changed them to involve sacking quarterbacks. Watt redshirted his first year at Wisconsin before earning a scholarship and wreaking havoc as a defensive end over the next 2 seasons, recording 106 tackles, 36.5 tackles for loss, and 11.5 sacks. Following being named an All-American and winning college football's Defensive Impact Player of the Year award, Watt forewent his final year of eligibility and declared for the 2011 NFL Draft. Once viewed as nothing more than an afterthought at a small program, he had transformed himself into a top NFL prospect. Watt further cemented that he belonged by putting together an insane scouting combine performance. He turned heads with his 37-inch vertical, 10-foot broad jump, and 34 bench press reps, all tops among his position group. After years of being doubted, Watt left zero doubt as to whether he deserved to hear his name called in the first round of the draft.
With the 11th pick in the 2011 NFL Draft, the Houston Texans select J.J. Watt, defensive end, Wisconsin.
So, the Texans made him the first defensive end taken off the board. And to think, his coaches at Central Michigan wanted him to play offensive tackle. Watt was now tasked with helping turn around a franchise that had never been to the playoffs in its existence. And Houston, desperate for all the help they could get, immediately gave him a chance to make an impact. As a rookie, JJ started all 16 games and had 56 tackles, 13 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks, and 2 fumble recoveries. More importantly, the Texans made the postseason for the first time in franchise history, and the bright lights of those playoffs would serve as Watt's national coming-out party. In Houston's 2 playoff games, he was nearly unstoppable, with 11 solo tackles, 3.5 sacks, and a pick 6. They were performances that put the rest of the league on notice, and had Watt determined to build on it the following season. Filled with confidence, Watt's second year was simply unforgettable. It didn't matter if opposing teams double or triple teamed him. There was no stopping Watt from getting to the quarterback. He could bull rush and push a tackle back into the QB's lap, or speed rush and leave them blocking Casper. His blend of power and quickness was something the league hadn't seen since Reggie White. He finished the season with a league-leading 20.5 sacks and 39 tackles for loss to go with 4 forced fumbles, 2 fumbles recovered, and 16 pass deflections. Watt received 49 out of 50 votes for the Defensive Player of the Year award, as he became the first Texan to ever win it and only the 8th defensive end since 1971 to do so. To this day, the season he put together is regarded as one of the most all-around dominant seasons by a defender in NFL history. Watt's following year saw a slight decline in production, with 10.5 sacks, 22 tackles for loss, 4 forced fumbles, and 2 fumble recoveries, but he was still impactful enough to be named first-team All-Pro. And with the Texans coming off a 2-14 season, it was crystal clear that Watt was a franchise cornerstone that Houston couldn't afford to let get away. So prior to the start of the 2014 season, they signed him to a 6-year, $100 million extension that made him the highest-paid non-quarterback in the league based on average yearly salary. And after being given such a life-changing contract, some players may have relaxed a bit, but not Watt. He set out to prove to the Texans and the world that he was worth every single penny of the deal. That year, Watt racked up another 20.5 sack season, a league-high 29 tackles for loss, 4 fumbles forced, 5 fumble recoveries, and 1 interception. These game-breaking numbers propelled him to another Defensive Player of the Year award, and this time in unanimous fashion.
When I was able to get to 20.5 sacks for the second time in my career, and they told me that nobody'd ever done that before, I think that was pretty special.
And as if he wasn't impacting the game enough on the defensive side of the ball, Watt had somehow found another way to leave his mark. Showing off what could have been had Central Michigan stuck with him at tight end, Watt caught 3 touchdowns on 3 targets. It was further proof that there was nothing he couldn't do on the football field.
Watt lined up top of your screen. They go his way. Watt! Oh my gosh.
But after this historic year, Watt faced his first true test of adversity in the league. Over the following season, he had to deal with a nagging groin injury and a fractured left hand. These injuries would slow down almost anyone, but JJ still managed to piece together another masterclass on how to be an offense's worst nightmare. He finished with a league-leading 17.5 sacks and 29 tackles for loss on his way to winning his 3rd Defensive Player of the Year award in 4 seasons. He became just the 2nd player ever to win the award 3 times, and it only took him 5 seasons in the league to do it.
And the 2015 AP Defensive Player of the Year is
JJ Watt.
It was an unbelievable and unheard of start to an NFL career, but just when it seemed like Watt was more superhero than human, he came crashing back to earth. Prior to the 2016 season, Watt was forced to undergo back surgery for a herniated disc. Although he recovered from the surgery in time for Week 1, Watt was only able to play 3 games before finding himself on the IR. The back problems just wouldn't go away, so he had to undergo another surgery and was ruled out for the rest of the year. After a long and exhausting road back to becoming healthy, Watt was ready to go for the 2017 campaign, but in Week 5, he was met with a new devastating setback. Watt left the game with a leg injury, and it was later revealed that he had suffered a fracture in his left leg. Once again, his season was over before it could get going. For the first time in a very long time, doubt began to creep in with Watt. People questioned whether or not he could stay healthy while playing at a high level again. So, heading into the following year, JJ was a man on a mission to prove that he could return to his old form. He went out and finished 2nd in the league with 16 sacks and 1st with 7 forced fumbles. Along with being named a first-team All-Pro, Watt was also making history. Since sacks became an official stat in 1982, JJ Watt became just the 2nd player ever to record 4 seasons seasons with at least 15 sacks. But even though he had once more silenced the naysayers, Watt's body wasn't done fighting him. In Week 8 of the next season, he suffered a torn pectoral muscle and was placed on IR. For nearly anyone else, the injury would have been season-ending. But the thing is, Watt doesn't have your average pain tolerance. In fact, it's not even close.
That'll be the day, but right now, I'm willing to accept the pain and everything, try to get the glory.
With the Texans having made the playoff, Watt shocked the world by coming back early from injury to suit up for the postseason. In the wild card game against the Bills, he had a crucial sack on Josh Allen.
Looks left, pressure and taken down. And it is J.J. Watt.
That kept Houston in the game that they would end up winning. It was a gritty performance that will forever be a part of Texans lore, and it showed that JJ would do anything for the franchise, which is what made what happened after the following season so shocking. In 2020, Watt played all 16 games for Houston, but he had a down year with only 5 sacks. And less than a week after that season's Super Bowl, Watt broke the hearts of an entire city by requesting to be released.
I have sat down with the McNair family, and I have asked them for my release, and we have mutually agreed to part ways at this time.
Over the last 10 years, he had become the face of not only the Texans, but arguably all of Houston. He was the heartbeat of the team on the field, but also a staple of the community off it. After Hurricane Harvey struck Houston in 2017, Watt was on the front lines and raised over $37 million to help rebuild the city. He probably could have run for mayor.
It's J.J. Watt, you know how he raised an incredible $33 million for all those in need.
But ultimately, the Texans did what once would have been unthinkable and granted Watt his release. Then, as a free agent for the first time in his career, Watt had to find a new home. He ended up signing with the Cardinals on a 2-year, $28 million contract. And as fate would have it, Arizona faced off against Houston in Week 7 of the 2021 season. And during the second quarter of that emotional game for Watt, he suffered a shoulder injury. However, he was not about to let some injury keep him from playing the full game against his old team. So he played through the pain. A few days later, it was revealed that he would need season-ending shoulder surgery and was placed on the IR. But by this point in time, it should be clear that Watt doesn't follow any norms when it comes to comeback schedules. With the Cardinals having made the playoffs, he once again returned from injury early to suit up in the big wildcard game. Though unfortunately for him and Arizona, there was no fairy tale ending this time, as they lost to the Rams. If anyone somehow still questioned Watt's toughness or love of football, headlines during the 2022 season silenced them. Leading up to the Cardinals' Week 4 game, Watt revealed on social media that he had to have his heart shocked back into rhythm. And despite this extremely scary-sounding event, 3 days later, he played against the Panthers. Then, following Arizona's Week 16 game, Watt decided to make headlines one last time, with a social media post saying that this would be his final season. He believed it was time to walk away from the sport that he had given everything to, and then some.
I want to be remembered making plays. I want to be remembered trying to do whatever I possibly can to help my team win games. I don't want people to remember me getting knocked on my ass, you know?
Watt finished his career with 114.5 sacks, 195 tackles for loss, 27 forced fumbles, 17 fumble recoveries, 70 pass deflections, and 317 quarterback hits. There's no telling how many all-time records Watt could have set or approached had he been able to stay healthy and have a longer career. But after battling through countless injuries and surgeries, on his way to being 3-time Defensive Player of the Year and 5-time First-Team All-Pro, he will go down as one of the toughest players in league history and the greatest Houston Texan to ever lace him up.